And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 2 of this week's mailbag. As you can see, once again, if you are tuning in on YouTube, it is just myself, Robbie, along with Snail here. This is not a Penscast recap episode. It's just another mailbag with Snail and I as Garrett continues to recover from whatever the heck he was doing on New Year's. It's getting a little scary at this point. I think he's alive. We don't know. Whatever. If he is, he is. If he's not, it just means Snell then. But
The show goes on.
The show goes on. I mean, resilience. We're basically hockey players. Doesn't matter what it is. The show goes on. We power
We're
through.
Phil Kessel, Iron Man.
Yeah, we don't. We just took a holiday break like the hockey did, and we are back. And before we get into the questions this week, I think we got a dozen on here. If you listen to part 1, you'll know it was all Brian in part 1. This one, more Brian mixed with some others as well. So we thank all of them once again for submitting questions, so we can do this every week, and it keeps us busy. So we'll jump right in here. Question 1 from Brian. I will take this one. The PWHL, which is the new women's hockey league in North America, announced a 3-2-1 0-point system, and if a team scores shorthanded, the penalized player is freed from the box. I would really like the NHL to adopt both of these roles. What are your thoughts? I think it was not that long ago, just a few weeks ago, we talked about a three-point system, and it's something that I've advocated for. It's something they use at the international level, at the junior level, in North America, and I think it's a much more fair and balanced point system because it doesn't allow it takes away some of the effect of the loser point, which can sometimes unfairly, it's kind of unbalanced sometimes and unfairly benefit teams that kind of just get to overtime and get that point, and can really hinder other teams from moving up and down in the standings when they're winning games in regulation. So I really like the 3-point system. The shorthanded out of the box, or the shorthanded kind of like kills a penalty automatically. Honestly, I don't hate it. I think it adds a fun little quirk, and I think it would force teams, or push teams maybe, to maybe be a little more aggressive on the penalty kill, thus making it more effective for a power play as well. If you get a guy that's maybe being a little too aggressive on a penalty kill, a good power play, so not the Penguins, takes advantage of that aggressiveness. And even if it's just a 3-second 5-on-3 advantage because a guy's out of position, hey, a good power play can take advantage. Barely needs 3 seconds to take advantage of a situation like that. So it's not something that I would hate maybe experimenting with at a minor league level just to see how it works. But if of those two roles, I am all on board. The 3-point role absolutely needs to be implemented. Should have been implemented years ago, but alas, we are still stuck with the antiquated 2-point system, the 2-1-0 point system. But yeah, I like the 3-point system, and I like the idea of the penalty kill if you score shorthanded kind of deal as well. Snell, any thoughts on those rules?
No, not really. I agree that the 3-2-1 0-point system. I don't have too much of a opinion on that, but something that I've long since advocated for would be to if a team scores on the penalty kill, that it ends the power play. Like, I think that, and the only reason really why I think it would. Garrett harps on this all the time. Garrett doesn't like the fighting and the rough and tumble and everything that makes hockey unique and cool. He likes it because he likes the scoring. And I would agree with him on this, that we like our star players out there. And I think that if you have incentive to score on the penalty kill shorthanded, you're putting your stars out there more. And I think, you're going to put Sid and Jake out there for a shift, probably situational, and I'm all for that. Why not? So those are my thoughts on it.
Alrighty, and fair enough. And question number 2 again from Brian here, but this one's going over to Snell here. Is there even a debate anymore on who is the GOAT who is the GOAT if on Spit and Chicklets, Wayne and Mary? I don't know. Did you listen to the Spit and Chicklets, Snail?
Yeah, so basically on Spit and
Yeah, because I
Chicklets,
think there might be a typo here that's kind
yeah,
of that, or I'm just gonna let you kind of
Garrett's cross-eyed at home writing these things up for us.
yeah. So if you just want to kind of explain the question, I don't want to
Yeah.
confuse the listeners too much, and you can give the answer as well.
No, yeah, sure. So basically, what Brian must have listened to the recent Spit and Chicklets episode, the one on that dropped on Christmas where they interviewed Wayne, and Wayne point blank essentially says that Mario was like the best hockey player he's ever seen, and he would have essentially, he thinks he would have broken his records had he played. So let's get into a little bit of Mario Wayne comparison here. I just for the record, I've always said that I think Mario is probably the greatest hockey player. Had he not had the injuries and the illness, you'd probably be seeing 66s all over every arena as opposed to 99s. But I mean, durability is a part of being great in the sport. Luck, whether it's luck that ties into it or if you're reckless the way you play the game, that reflects on your career. And you know, Mario wasn't a reckless, dirty player who just got himself like he wasn't Lindros who skated with his head down all the time and was out of the league quick because of the concussions. This was just it was just bad. It was just what am I trying to say? It was a misfortune. It sucked. Cancer. There's that was awful. And his back. I mean, he was a big dude. He's a tall guy, big frame. Those when you're playing a physical sport like that, we can all agree that the wear and tear will get you eventually. So let's just go over some stats here really quick. I did a couple calculations, so hopefully these are right. But one thing that shocked me when I was looking into this that I didn't really think about is, dude, Mario Lemieux didn't play 1,000 games in the NHL. Sid, Gino, Letang, they've all played 1,000 games. Looking back at the greatest Penguin who ever donned the black and gold, Mario never hit that 1,000 game. He doesn't have a silver stick in there. He ended his career with 993, or sorry, not 915 games played.
Yeah.
So Wayne played 1,487 games. So that's 572 more games that Wayne played, and that equates to just 2 games under 7 full seasons. So Wayne has 894 NHL goals, 1,963 assists, which is just weird. It sounds crazy to even say, for 2,857 points. In less than 1,000 games, Mario had 10 shy of 700 goals, 690 goals, 1,033 assists for 1,723 points. So with that, Robbie, I mean, could in 7 more seasons, if we had a healthy Lemieux, in let's just say 7, maybe 6.5, because there's probably going to be games that he'd miss due to injury or something. You could average it out to, let's just say like 6 to 7 full seasons. Could Mario have scored 204 goals, had 930 assists for 1,134 points?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the numbers he would have put up if he was fully healthy, didn't retire, didn't have the cancer, didn't have all the back issues, and generally just took care of his body. Yeah, he would have been by far and away. He would have annihilated Gretzky's records. I mean, 915 career games. Crosby's at well over 1,000 and is still probably at least 2 or 3 seasons away from even becoming in the same stratosphere as Mario's numbers. There's no player like him. Again, to get a guy like Gretzky to say that, just the talent that he was. But like you said, longevity and durability is a huge part in all that as well. You see a guy like Ovechkin, very rarely, even though he's struggling this year, he's not out injured. He's very rarely missed any significant amount of time. And Crosby, if Crosby doesn't miss that big chunk with the concussion and neck problems, the spine problems, he is by far and away, he leads Ovechkin in points, but he would have a much larger gap if if he wasn't injured all those years. But hey, you can't get those games back. That was the prime of his career, and it's unfortunate. But the durability has to count for something, and it's unfortunate that Lemieux didn't get all that extra time because I don't think there's much argument that he would be 66 would be hanging from rafters throughout the league. Not that 99 wouldn't, because I think Gretzky would have still put up the numbers. Not like Lemieux. It's not like it was like because Lemieux played more games, Gretzky played less. I just think the argument changes a little bit. There's a very clear 1 and 2 in NHL history if Lemieux plays all those, and I still think it's pretty clear who the 1 and 2 are. It just the debate outside of Pittsburgh is more 66 is better than 99 rather than vice versa.
I agree with you, Robbie. I think the one thing that really stands out to me in this, like discussing this question, and you want to talk about Ovi and the goal scoring record, dude, Mario played a cumulative about 7 full seasons less than Wayne did, and they were in the league at the same time. 7 full seasons. That's a lot of that's a lot of games, dude. 82 game seasons.
Yeah.
And he's shy of Wayne's goals by give or take 200 goals. I think if you have a healthy Lemieux in 7 seasons, he's scoring 200 goals.
Yeah,
I mean, he
absolutely
in a healthy Lemieux in his prime years, in those years that he missed. I mean, would it have been like if he put up 50 a year? That's 204 seasons right there. Yet alone 6 to 7 full seasons. I mean, I think it would be. It'd be Ovi chasing Lemieux right now. I think it's like
completely fair. Absolutely.
And I hope that our listeners, tweet at us or whatever and discuss amongst themselves. But, anyways, fascinating discussion. I love talking about the what ifs and whatever. And I like how you put a spin on it with Sid. Sid just passed Joe Thornton.
Yeah.
And Joe Thornton's a hell of a player. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a great player in his own right. But
absolutely.
But that really puts shines a light on, like, dude, Sid has played over 1,000 games, and he just eclipsed Joe for what was it, 12th or something like that?
I believe it's 12th, yeah.
12th, and Joe Thornton is not even in the same breath. It's not even close to a Lemieux or a Wayne or whatever. Anyways, we can stop talking about this, but this is a conversation that I love having, so we'll move on. This next question comes from Brian, and it would be going to Garrett, but Garrett is in his drawers in his room probably right now, listening to Star Wars soundtracks, hungover still. Brian asks here, do you see a scenario where we are sellers at the trade deadline? Brian's brought up being sellers a couple of times. I see where his I see he's a little pessimistic. Do you see a scenario where we're sellers at the trade deadline? Honestly, if we ever are going to be, it should have been last season, but we had incompetence at the helm of the club. He means Ron Hextall. And Garrett's response to that, yeah, there is a pretty clear scenario, in my opinion. The Penguins this season, without that 5-game win streak and this recent 7-2-1 stretch, have been a bad, underperforming team. I'm still not convinced they're consistent enough to withstand another significant losing streak, throwing points away like they have all season. Out of the new year, they really don't have a lot of wiggle room left to falter. Bottom 6 depth is still questionable in my opinion, and even though they have star power, they're an older, slower team. And Garrett hopes that they prove him wrong. Robbie, you got anything you want to chime in on that?
I mean, talk about pessimistic. Holy crap, they both are a little bit
they're
a
down
little bit
on
off
the
down on the pens there. But I mean, I don't think the Penguins are going to be in a position come the trade deadline where they're clearly out of it. I think it's going to be like last season, where it's going to be on the bubble. I just don't foresee a situation where they are very clear sellers at the deadline. And I would say that being on the bubble makes you closer to a buyer than a seller. So that's my thoughts. Unless they would completely just fall apart in January here before the All-Star break, then then the scenario changes. But I just don't see them in a position where they are that far out of the picture where they are selling pieces to other teams. And honestly, I don't know what pieces they really have to sell that would bring them back, unless you're just looking to get rid of bottom 6 guys that can be used.
Like Achari, those 1-year deals, I think, that Luba signed. Those are trade deadline guys.
Yeah, that you would get like a mid-round draft pick just to bolster the farm system a bit. But I mean, again, I'm just not as of right now. I do not foresee them being again with the logjam in the Metro. It just there's too many variables to say they're going to be sellers at the deadline for me right now.
I mean, Rob, they didn't go out and get Dubas didn't go out and get Carlson for them to be selling at the deadline. Like
Yeah,
you'd
no,
think that part of me, the reason why maybe like pessimism comes out, but I'm not like fully bought into it. I can be down on the Pens at times, but one of the things that I hold on to here is Dubas. I feel like he will move heaven and earth to get this team into the playoffs. He will pull whatever strings need to happen. And if there's a break glass in case of emergency scenario where they just absolutely soil themselves and there's no chance of them being in the playoffs by February, then I think he's got himself set up with some of these depth players on 1 year contracts where like a team would they could get a decent return, I think, for what they for Achari or a Nieto or Hinestroza. Carlson, good. Like I mean, he moved like I've said this before. He moved heaven and earth to acquire that contract. I don't know if that's a trade deadline piece unless a significant defenseman on another team is on long-term injured reserve and some team has some money to play with. I think right now I'm hearing that teams retaining salary, that's a first round pick in itself right now, the going
yeah,
rate for
probably.
retaining salary. I mean, let's hope that it doesn't go there. My whole thing is, and I think Robbie, you'd agree that like they didn't bring in Dubas, they didn't bring in Carlson to be out of it by February. They're going to move heaven and earth to keep things trucking here.
Absolutely agree.
So let's move on here to question number 4. This goes to Rob, and Brian asks, do you think there will be a better Winter Classic than the first one? And that's the one I believe he's referring to in 2008 with Sid in Buffalo, Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
Will there be a better classic than that? Winter Classic than that one? There's some bias here, but the atmosphere with the snow and Army scoring 21 seconds in and Sid with the shootout winner. Robbie, can you beat that Winter Classic?
Very, very good question because, again, like Brian says, just the one, I mean, it's the first time, at least in the United States, they went outside. You had the biggest name in hockey. It was like a snow globe. The scene was perfect. Crosby gets that shootout winner. It's a pretty good hockey game for the most part for an outdoor game. And it was the launching pad for every outdoor game we've seen since then. So I think from a scenic perspective, you'll probably never get a game better than that because, again, it was just the snow was falling. It was just basically what you imagine pond hockey being like. And, I mean, there's been some really good outdoor games, some really competitive outdoor games. So I don't want to, again, that game wasn't, again, teams were still learning out. That's the first that, for the most part, the teams really understood how to play outside. It's a different game. The ice is choppier. Again, even back then, the ice compared to, like, you saw the ice in Seattle on Monday, how nice that looked. The ice back then, like, they didn't understand fully. The technology's advanced since then. So from a game perspective, I'd say there's probably been better games. But from a hype, scenic perspective, I just don't know how you top that unless you get just some unreal snowstorm where it just feels like you're playing pond hockey. I did like the game at Lake Tahoe a few years ago. I thought that felt like a very pond hockey-ish type game. But I mean, I love the Buffalo game. You had the Penguins in those beautiful light blue throwbacks. At that time, the Sabres were wearing those ugly, like, modern day Buffalo uniforms. They went back to their Buffaloes with the actual Sabres on them. A great uniform matchup, and really just the hype and everything really made that game special. Question number 5 from Brian, jumping over to Snail here. Curious what everyone thinks about McDavid's legacy. If he doesn't get at least one cup in Edmonton, but leaves and gets one somewhere else, how do you think that affects his legacy?
So I'd be curious, Robbie, feel free to chime in on this as well. But the way that Brian worded this question, I think the key part here is if he gets a cup. I think when he says gets one, I think he means a cup. If he gets one, if he were to leave Edmonton, how does this affect his legacy? I don't think it affects his legacy. I think it affects Edmonton's. If anything, it affects Edmonton's legacy, I guess, because how do they fumble they have Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and they weren't able to properly insulate him with the depth and the goaltending and the competency, the decor, all the little things that you need, the details to make a cup winning team. You had not just one, but I would say Leon is a golden goose in himself. He's an amazing player. Any team would give up an arm and a leg to have him. You have two of these guys, all the first round picks in the decade prior to Connor McDavid, all those first overall picks, and you couldn't assemble a winning roster with a guy like Connor McDavid coming in. It's like shame on Edmonton if Connor leaves and gets a cup elsewhere. Connor's going to get his cup. Connor's too good of a player. If he doesn't get his cup, he will go down as the best player of all time to never win a cup. And I don't think I don't think he's a driven and determined individual. His work ethic on and off the ice, he's much like Sid. The talent level is through the roof. If you don't think that if he ends up leaving Edmonton, he's leaving there with a chip on his shoulder and he's hungry for a cup, he's gonna get one. It's just his legacy will be cemented in, like, he will be one of the greatest players of all time, an ultimate point getter, and he's gonna win. It's gonna the legacy that will be affected is Edmonton's for fumbling the bag, so to say, with all the talent that they could have accumulated and the lack of competency in the general manager position to insulate a guy like Connor McDavid and put together a winning roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not really McDavid's legacy at all. It's Edmonton's legacy of failure. I mean, again, and that's more than just McDavid there as well, because I mean, look at the picks they've had. I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Taylor Hall, Nail Yakupov, all this talent, even Jesse Puljujarvi, who's now in Wilkes-Barre, he was a top 5 overall pick. It just, that's Edmonton, their legacy of failure. Again, there'll probably be like an ESPN doc in 25 years about how they did fail to win a cup. But McDavid and Draisaitl are going to get theirs at some point. It just depends on whether or not it's in royal blue and orange or a different uniform. But that's on the Oilers, not on McDavid and Draisaitl.
No, and if he leaves, Edmonton fans can't be pissed about it, because I mean they will be, and they have their right to be pissed. But like, yeah, I mean, dude, like the faults of Edmonton, it's not like they ceased. I mean, they signed that Jack Campbell this last year, and he's getting paid $6 million to lose games in the minors right now. The Hall for Larson trade is a trade that will live in infamy that Edmonton fumbled. Anyways, we can get off of this. Edmonton fans are gonna be bashing their screens. So, anyways, it's not going to affect. I think the consensus is it's not McDavid's legacy that will be affected. It'll be Edmonton's.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 6 here. This would be going to Garrett, and it's from Kim Larson. And Kim Larson asks, if you could pick one line to remake the Penguins, what players would you choose? You need one goalie, 2 defenders, 1 center, and 2 wingers. You can pick from every team, but only one from each team. No current Penguins players. And Rob, can you read this off for us here? Garrett,
yeah,
I feel like expressed absolutely no creativity here, but go ahead and read it.
So he went with his center was Connor Bedard. His wingers are David Pastrnak and Matthew Tkachuk. Defensemen are Cale Makar and Adam Fox, and his goaltender is Andrei Vasilevsky. Just looking at this, I would remove Matthew Tkachuk because I think there's better options. Again, Tkachuk not having a great year. He's tough and physical, but, I mean, man, I would take off Andrei Vasilevsky as well.
Really?
I would take off Vasilevsky, and I think I'd add Nikita Kucherov as my winger. And my goaltender, I hate to do this because Adam Fox is so good. I would almost pull off Adam Fox and put on Igor Shesterkin as my goaltender. Makar, I think the way Makar is playing is he's just otherworldly.
He is.
He's a freak. My other defenseman, like, I kind of went like it's so hard to kind of pick like what do you want in a defenseman in this position, and I was just like bouncing all over the place with this. And again, a couple names kept coming to mind. I'm like, oh wait, I already took somebody off that team. Can't go there. And I really couldn't come to a full on. I guess is it Heiskanen?
Miro
Is he
Heiskanen.
the one in Dallas?
Yep.
Yeah, I would probably go with Heiskanen there. And then from a future standpoint, it's really hard um, to go against Bedard just because, I mean, I don't know how long you're planning on keeping this roster together, but Bedard clearly is going to be the guy in the NHL in the next 15, 20 years. But I don't know how at this point right now you look at this and you're just not like, that has to be Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I think with Garrett's roster, I think going with Connor Bedard as your winger and having like Pasternak and Matthew Tkachuk, it feels like they just entered the league, but like they're already like older.
Yeah.
And like Cale Makar and Adam Fox, I mean, Vasilevsky is old, like compared to the rest of these guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like Garrett just looked at like who are like the top like 15 players in the NHL right now, and he just like plucked every like he just skipped a name every time and picked one. I love Matthew Tkachuk. I love what he brings. I agree with that pick simply because he's a playoff performer. He's just got that grit out there. He plays like his dad kind of. And on a wing, you need that from one of your wingers. I would have to agree with you. Why would you not go Connor McDavid? Like Bedard is something sick and special, but I mean, if you're, let's just be honest, this looks like a win now roster. You're going Connor McDavid at center all day. Pasternak, sure. I think I would go with Cale Makar, but I think if we're being more realistic here, instead of Adam Fox, I don't really care too much for Adam Fox. I think he's a great defenseman, but Cale Makar is like, I mean, he's the guy. I'd get a left-handed guy in there. I'd get Hedman in there, who is definitely older. He's more on the back nine of his career, but just a steady Eddie left shot defenseman who could jump up and do some offense. But he's also got that like kind of big looming physical presence back there. And goaltending, Vasilevsky. I guess when you said you take Vasilevsky off, I was a little bit like, why? But he's not. He's just had back surgery. He's not having the greatest season. It'd have to be meh. I'd go Hellebuck.
Not a bad pick as well. Can't argue with that as well.
So there you have it. We pick apart Garrett's selections there, and for just cause. Let's move on to question number 7. This is going over to Rob, and it's from Kim Larson again. And Kim asks, do you think Dubas will make a trade now? And where would you strengthen if you were Dubas? So a little mile in Kyle's shoes, if you will, Robbie.
A little bit. And my answer to the first part of the question is going to be no. Where would you strengthen? Clearly the bottom 6 needs strengthened. I think we've been kind of harping on all that on that all year. But here's what I'm kind of thinking right now, where Kyle Dubas's brain might be. And that's in what happened with Jesse Puljujarvi. He's going to do a stint with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. He signed a PTO. He's been working out with the Penguins in Pittsburgh for the past couple of weeks, still recovering or coming off hip surgery. So, again, not an easy comeback there, but a guy that has good offensive metrics and can generate offense. He has trouble finishing, unfortunately, which is kind of a theme for the Penguins, overall. But a guy that can maybe jolt that bottom 6, and he can move up and down the roster. He's a guy that has been lobbied for by people who talk about the Penguins in the past. So I kind of wonder if he won't sit around to see how Puljujarvi performs, and instead of making a snap trade, uses that route rather than going to the trading block.
Robbie, that Puljujarvi is really interesting because in Edmonton, I think he was like a beloved player by Edmonton, but yeah, he got harped on quite a bit because he just couldn't finish and he couldn't keep up with their big dogs like a Leon and a McDavid. But in his point totals don't wow you for being, insulated with those great players. But like, what about Puljujarvi as like a third line right winger, and you put him on a line with like Drew O'Connor and Lars Eller? I mean, He doesn't need to be a big dog. He's a big frame too. If he could learn how to get nasty around the net, I think Puljujarvi is like that. Instead of making a trade, he is like that extra piece that's kind of just hanging around right now. That could totally be, that could be a big piece for them if he comes through.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, going to Kim here again. Going over to Snail. Could the Penguins get an outdoor game in say 2025?
No, I don't think so.
Nah.
I think 2025. I don't know how relevant the Penguins will be unless they get somehow a first overall pick again, and they've got some shiny new toy in Pittsburgh. That's the only way I think that they're even sniffing around another outdoor game with the Penguins involved. They've had a bunch. They've had their share for quite a while during Sid's career. I would probably safe to say that it's going to be the maybe like it's going to be Bedard in Chicago will probably be featured more often in these Winter Classic games in the next decade. So unfortunately, no. Kim.
Yeah.
All right, and this is another one going over to Garrett, who's absent today. Question number 9 from Kim Larson. Have you ever been to away games? If yes, where? And Garrett says he has not. But bucket list arenas include the Bell Center and Madison Square Garden in New York. Robbie, you ever been to an away game?
I've not been to an away game. The Bell Center is actually one that's on my bucket list as well because it doesn't even have to be the Penguins. I have been to a game. I was in Nashville for a game that did not involve the Penguins that I went to. It was the Penguins and Sharks in a playoff game back in 2016. But I've never attended a true Penguins road game on the road. But I will say I do want to attend. I do want to go to the Bell Center just because it just seems like such a crazy atmosphere. Even if the Canadians aren't good, that place just seems wild. Where else do I just because I think it's such a bizarre situation, the college arena that the Coyotes are playing in, just to be because again, they don't have a ton of fans, but they seem to be putting people in the seats and they are entertaining enough. They're not a completely drag on the hockey world. They're actually entertaining. And you shove 5,000 people in that arena, I'm sure you can get it pretty raucous. Especially if a decent opponent's in town. But other than that, I'd like to attend a game in the Bell Center, and because I want to visit Snail at some point, we want to go to a game at Climate Pledge up in Seattle. And I actually wouldn't mind attending a Thunderbirds game either.
Those are great. I would recommend. Yeah, you guys got to come out here. We all got to meet up in our respective cities. So I have been to a Penguins away game because I live in Seattle, and formerly known as the Key Arena, now the Climate Pledge Arena.
Yes,
it's an awesome barn, man. It's a great arena. I would like to attend a home game in Pittsburgh. I would like to go to PPG Paints Arena. I think if I were to check out a Penguins road game anywhere else, I think I'd like to check out Philly. I'd like to see the hostility of a Penguins Flyers game in Philadelphia.
Yeah. I don't blame you there.
Philadelphia seems without hockey bias, Philadelphia seems like an awesome city to just check out, right? Have you been to Philly, Rob?
I've been to the city. I've never been to a game.
Yeah, so you've been to the city. I've heard it's a great city.
It doesn't get the hype, but it's an absolutely fantastic food city.
Yeah.
And that's not just from Philly, cheesesteaks, legitimate, excellent food scene in Philadelphia. So if you ever do, and don't listen to what people say about Philly, it's like every other city. It has rough parts, but the good parts, it's absolutely, the food is great. The people, again, they get the bad reputation, but if you're not there for sports, they will welcome you and they are super chill. And it's just, really solid city, really good food. And again, I do want to attend as a Penguins fan just to experience that. But again, with that rivalry, the Flyers are, I guess, going to be on the rise. The Penguins, how it's going to take a while, I think, until that rivalry is really cooking again. So right now might be the best time to maybe attend as a Penguins fan to avoid being shoved in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah.
But no, Philly, I do like Philly. I can't knock on it because it does have good parts, but always will be a Pittsburgh sports over Philly sports. But if you get a chance, attend or go to Philly. It's a great city. I can't. I'm not going to be one of those people that rags on the city just because I don't like the sports teams.
Right. Yeah. So my family, I have family on my mom's side that live in Birdsboro, Pennsylvania, which is
Mm-hmm.
outside of Philly, and all I think my like grandparents that I've never met, my great grandparents and all that. They big Eagles fans, Phillies fans,
Okay.
Flyers fans.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that I became a Penguins fan, but I'd love to check out Pennsylvania as a whole. There's a lot of
Oh yeah.
it's odd growing up. Just a lot of like random interests of mine have all come from this. I think you, Robbie, you call it the Keystone State.
Yes.
It's a lot of my interests, like some of my favorite skateboarders,
Okay.
my favorite bands. There's something in the water out in Pennsylvania that's just been calling to me. So I'd love to check out a home game at PPG, and I'd love to check. Is it still called the Spectrum in Philly?
No, it's the Wells Fargo Center now. The Spectrum is their old home where the Penguins didn't win for like 30 years.
Oh, okay, so the Wells Fargo Center, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd love to check out a game there. So it's Kim. Sounds like maybe Kim might be traveling over to check out
Maybe.
an away game, maybe. All right, Rob. This question's going over to you. This is question 10 from Edward Beckham. How easy is driving in the States, and where would you advise visiting within 2 to 3 hours? I'm
2 to
ass-
3 hours.
I would. What I think this is he's saying maybe he's got a. And where would you advise visiting? Maybe let's take it as within 2 to 3 hours of Pittsburgh. I don't know if it's. Yeah, I think that would make sense, right?
I guess. I'm trying to see if I can look up this guy. I can't find but
Driving in
So-
the States, that'll get some. You'll get a dozen.
I mean, that
different
could be-
answers from
I
a dozen
mean-
different people.
yeah, you get like 1,000 different answers from 1,000 different people. Let's see if I'm going to try to see if I can. Let's see, Edward. It does not have where he's from. Looks like he's from maybe England. I think he's definitely from England.
I don't
But,
know
okay,
if like
so-
Robbie. I think I asked Garrett that like last pod he was on, and he said England, and I don't know if Garrett actually knows that, or if it's just because his last name's Beckham, he associates him with.
I found his I found his question on this week's tweet, and I opened his account, and he's definitely either he's just a very big Liverpool Premier League fan, which he is, but I definitely think he is
He's from across the pond.
Yeah, he's definitely from across the pond. So how is driving in the States? That is completely dependent on where you are at. City driving is city driving. Country driving is basically the exact opposite of that. Our roads are, from what I know, wider than European roads, mostly because they're newer. Now, as for condition of roads, that all varies depending on where you're at.
And your local
Pensil-
government.
Your local government, yeah. Pennsylvania has notoriously bad roads because our weather shifts between summer and then in the winter it gets wet and cold, and wet and cold is terrible on asphalt. So condition of roads not great. Now we have major interstate systems that run across country, which are pretty much very easy driving. We have driving through mountains, we have driving through plains, we have driving through hills, we have driving through prairies. It all varies depending on where you're at. I think the driving in our area, if the weather's good, is fine. But that is all just my take on that. I don't know how the drivers are in Seattle. The drivers in Pittsburgh can be crazy, but the Pittsburgh roads can be a little confusing because everything's on a bridge. And the city itself it's a modern city, but it's also a very old city because it's been here since there's been people living here since well before the revolution. Yeah, you're on bridges all the time because of the rivers. Downtown can be tight, but that's how most cities are. We drive on the right, you drive on the left, so I'm sure that would be a bit of a culture shock, getting used to that, and obviously sit on the other side of the car as well. But um, I think driving is fine. Advise visiting within 2 to 3 hours. I'm assuming that means of Pittsburgh. Now, 2 to 3 hours of Pittsburgh, there's Cleveland. Um, State College, if you're into like small college towns, is interesting. But not much farther than that. It's probably about the 4 or 5 hours is Washington, D.C. Toronto's actually not that far from Pittsburgh. Niagara Falls it's probably closer to the 3.5 number on that. But there's some places. There's also some small little towns. We're a very old state. So we have towns that are, very, very old, but plenty of places to visit. And the driving is really all on, I guess, your perspective. And I don't think it's that bad. Again, there's bad drivers everywhere, but I think it's completely tolerable as long as you're just responsible.
Good answer.
Question number 10, 11, sorry, from Kim Larson. What toppings do you put on a hot dog? Now, Snell, you are a vegan, so I'm assuming there's some kind of vegan hot dogs that you can enjoy.
Oh yeah, there's plant-based hot dog. I actually had two of them yesterday. I made hot dogs last night. Nothing. It's just probably a soy-based hot dog, but the toppings don't have to worry too much about toppings. I actually I experimented with cream cheese on a hot dog yesterday. Have you ever had that?
So I've heard of it, but I've never tried it. Cream cheese by itself, I'm not a huge fan of. But if you give me like, there's flavored cream cheeses, like a chive and onion cream cheese.
That's the one I use, a vegan chive and onion.
That I could absolutely see on a hot dog. I could see that on a burger too, as like a mayo spread in place of a mayo spread. But I could. What else did you have on this hot dog, or is it just the cream cheese?
No, I tried one with cream cheese just to because the Seattle dogs that we have here.
Oh, okay,
it's
that's right. Yes.
Thing. I guess it's like cream cheese on a hot dog. And I put a little bit of ketchup. I had another one that I did up differently, and my go-to is I love it's gonna sound, I love mustard.
I love mustard. I love all kinds of mustards.
Mustard. Oh, dude, I was just having this conversation with Riley, my partner, the other day. Like, I am on a Dijon mustard kick right now. I'm like finding excuses to put Dijon on things. I'm like making food with like Dijon in mind, which I know might sound crazy, but like I love a briny good mustard, man. Yellow mustard, Grey Poupon. Well, I'm a big mustard guy.
I actually would argue that just regular yellow mustard is the lower tier of the mustards.
Well, yeah, once you start getting into the world of mustards, like yellow is like his basic bitch type mustard. Like there's way better.
Me and Snail are going to start a mustard podcast after this.
I'd be very passionate about that.
I love a good mustard.
So yeah, I had on the other one that I made, I had ketchup, a little mustard, Dijon, of course, and I love sauerkraut.
Oh yeah,
I love sauerkraut. I can eat it hot, cold, by itself, on something. Again, something that sometimes I just get a hankering for. I'm a sucker for like salty, briny type foods. So sauerkraut always hits the spot. I think though, if I'm gonna make like a penultimate hot dog, like the kind of hot dog that I grab after a Kraken game, outside the Kraken games, like I'm sure most arenas, there's hot dog carts.
Oh yeah.
There's a hot dog cart that's always right in the same place. After I got out of Blink 182 at Climate Pledge Arena, I bought a hot dog from the same person I bought a hot dog from post Kraken game. They have the veggie dogs in there, and I get the same thing every time. I get a plant-based hot dog on the bun, and then I get grilled onions as a topper on there. They got the grilled onions going right there, greased up, cross-contaminated with animal fat. I don't give a shit. I'm usually half greased after a game anyways. Get the grilled onions going on there. I do the pickled jalapenos, a ton of mustard and sauerkraut, and I just try to fit that thing in my mouth, and it gets in my beard, and it's a sensory experience. So that's what I'm putting on a hot dog. Robbie, it would be a shame to not pass it to you and just give us what you put on a prime dog.
On a prime dog, man. See, I will change up my hot dog condiments depending on my mood. I love, again, a good mustard, like a spicy brown. To me is very good.
Oh,
Um,
spicy. Sorry to interject. Spicy mustard was a whole thing I had no idea until like a couple
uh,
summers ago. Uh,
yeah,
there's always a place in my fridge for a hot or a spicy mustard.
yeah. So we have a restaurant just down the street from me that has, it's a ketchup based sauce, but it's mixed with barbecue sauce, a little mayo for some creaminess, and like a dab of liquid smoke to give it like just a little bit of a smoky taste. Um, and that's very good on. It's a very good topping on literally anything. Um, I like putting like I'll put like the hot pepper rings, like the Italian hot pepper rings, on my dog. Um, Onions if I'm feeling it. Onions, chili sauce, chili cheese sauce is good. It just, I mean, there's so much you can do with a hot dog.
Oh yeah, it's just a yeah. Sometimes hot dogs are almost more of a vessel for toppings than they are an actual like the actual like
Oh
meat
yeah,
of the hot dog. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Sometimes all the hot dog is a supplemental side to the condiments that you put on top of it. Absolutely agree with that.
Yep. Kim, I would be curious if when you listen to this, you should tweet at us. I know, I'm pretty sure Kim is he's from Denmark.
Yes, I believe so. Yes,
If we're wrong, sorry about that, Kim. You could remind us, but you should tweet at us across the pond. What are you throwing on your hot dogs over there, and if there's any difference from what we passionately explained to you.
absolutely.
All right, moving on here to the last question of the mailbag for this week, and it's going to our absent friend Garrett, coming from Kim Larson yet again. Oh, he says right here, coming from Denmark. Coming from Denmark, we have a monarchy, and our queen has just abdicated on December 31st,
Yes.
2023. Would you have liked to have a king or a queen instead of a president?
Well, we tried this. Okay, we tried this.
Robbie, you should enlighten him quick on how that went with our king and queen
So,
scenario.
Kim, just hop on the old Google, just type in American Revolution, and you'll learn all about what happened when we had a king and a queen, or a king. I mean, yeah, a king more than anything. Um, there's a very, and this is what Garrett said. Garrett actually wrote a very thoughtful answer here. There's a famous myth that George Washington was vocally adamant about not overstaying his welcome as leader of the new nation. Basically, there were people that wanted George Washington to be a king. Again, just because we got rid of the king doesn't mean that everybody wanted to be um, without a king. They just wanted to be a king of our choosing. Very complicated, um, very convoluted. It's a whole mess. But we got rid of the English king. He decided to be a president at 4-year terms. That's what they decided on. He did not want the king label bestowed upon him. The founders decided that a monarchy system of government did
And
not
Robbie,
allow.
quickly, a president isn't like that is literally a civilian who presides, correct?
But yes, because when they are out of office, they are just a normal citizen. They do
They're an
not
average
hold.
Joe.
They have no. I mean, they're not just an average Joe. They still have protection, but they have no. They hold on to no powers. They hold on to no benefits of the office outside of the frame and prestige, which you can't. That just is a natural thing that comes. But they decided that the monarchy did not allow enough citizen input, so they decided on what we now have as a democracy or a republic. A democracy, in theory, is perhaps the best form of government. There is no divine or singular ruling party or leader, but to avoid this from becoming a political science course, Garrett says he will leave it at that. And that's pretty much the basis of it all. Do I wish we had a king or queen? No, no desire. I know that in some countries that do have them, they are more a figurehead than anything, but no, I don't think we need a king or queen. We have enough problems as set up currently. So I will leave my decision to that. But I did read about the Queen of Denmark abdicating her position on
What
New
does that
Year's Eve.
mean?
Step aside, step down.
Oh, essentially, yeah, just
Yeah, it's just a fancy word for basically stepping or for like
like
resigning.
resigning. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I don't know how it all works over there, but Kim, again, you grew up in that system. That's all you've ever known. I'm assuming. Much different over here. Obviously, you don't get in the Western world major governmental system changes anymore. But that's just my take on that. Yeah, no really need for a queen or a king, no real figurehead. And that was kind of established long before any of us were born. So that's kind of where we stand.
Yep, and I think we could all probably agree it's not perfect here.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
there's
I
no
mean,
way it's not perfect. But these colors don't run, Kim.
yeah, yeah. These colors, red, white, and blue, baby.
Red, white, and
USA,
boom.
USA, USA. I don't know if you're paying attention to World Juniors or anything or not, but the United States will be playing for World Junior Gold tomorrow. Well, it might be today when you listen to this. On Thursday, they will play a team with a king. The host Sweden is who they will be playing. So if you're into that kind of thing, tune into that. I believe it's on because of the time difference. It's sometime in the afternoon. But yeah, go USA, USA. Um, that's all I
Yep.
got.
Yep. Just we had to pump our own tires there for a
Oh
sec.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's the last question. Rob and I would like to thank each and every one of you for contributing and making this mailbag possible. The Penguins today, well, Rob and I will probably be reconvening tonight unless
Well,
any
yeah.
unforeseen circumstances come up. Penguins are playing Boston in Boston's barn, I believe.
Yes.
That'll be a tough game. Hopefully, we got good news after this. But Rob, you got any final thoughts?
I have no real final thoughts. Again, we will return this evening. You and I, well, last night by the time this gets out, probably.
Yeah.
We will recap the Penguins Bruins game, unless it's like a complete embarrassment. We'll save it for the weekend.
Yeah.
But as for mailbag, this wraps up part two. We will return with the mailbag as always next week. I'm assuming two parts again based on how most of the season has gone so far.
Yep.
Maybe Garrett will be back by then. I don't know. Just get that guy an IV or something like that. This is getting a little ridiculous. He's going to be put on IR here at some point. We need to save some of that cap space
Yeah.
that we're spending on Garrett. So,
Have you
um,
ever seen a weekend at Bernie's?
oh yeah, I mean,
Dude, Bernie
yeah.
Lomax him, just wheel him in, and
Just get somebody to go out there and like get him with like the string, and then he just like and just have his mouth. Just one of us will have to figure out a Garrett impression.
That would be too funny.
That would be. We can AI his voice and
Yeah.
get him out here talking. But as for Snell, I'm Robbie. That wraps up the mailbag for this week. Stay tuned for the recaps, both for Thursday's game and Saturday's game. Other than that, we will talk to you guys next week.